Hello everyone, in this video I am going to explain the literary terms starting with letter B. The first literary term is ballad. It is a song transmitted orally which tells a story. Ballads are thus the narrative species of folk songs which originate and are communicated orally among illiterate or only partially literate people. In all probability, the initial version of a ballad was composed by a single author, but he or she is unknown. And since each singer who learns and repeats an oral ballad is apt to introduce changes in both the text and the tune, it exists in many various forms. Typically, the popular ballad is dramatic, condensed, and impersonal. The narrator begins with the climatic episode, tells the story tersely by means of action and dialogue, and tells it without self reference or the expression of personal attitudes or feeling. The most common stanza form, called the ballad stanza, it is a quatrain in alternate 4 and 3 stress lines. Usually only the second and fourth line rhyme. This is the form of Sir Patrick Spence. The first stanza of this ballad also exemplify the conventionally abrupt opening and the manner of proceeding by third person narration, curtly sketched setting and action, sharp transition, and spare dialogue. This is the example. Many ballads employ set formulas, including stock descriptive phrases like blood red wine, milk white seed, a refrain in each stanza, incremental repetition, but with an addition that advances the story. Although many traditional ballads probably originated in the later Middle Ages, they were not collected and printed until the 18th century, first in England, then in Germany. And the first published ballad is a broadside ballad. It is a ballad that was printed on one side of a single sheet, dealt with a current event or person or issue, and was sung to a well known tune. Beginning with the 16th century, these broadsides were hawked in the streets or at country fairs in Britain. The traditional ballad has greatly influenced the form and style of lyric poetry in general. It has also engendered the literary ballad, which is a narrative poem written in deliberate imitation of the form, language, and spirit of the traditional ballad. The next literary term is Baroque. It is a term applied by art historians to a style of architecture, sculpture, and painting that developed in Italy at the beginning of the 17th century and then spread to Germany and other countries in Europe. The style employs the classical forms of the Renaissance but breaks them up and intermingles them to achieve elaborate, energetic, and highly dramatic effect. The term has been adopted with reference to literature with very diverse application. It may signify an elaboratory formal style in verse or prose. For example, Milton's Paradise Lost. The term is derived from Spanish and Portuguese name for a pearl that is rough and irregular in shape. The next literary term is bathos and anticlimax. Bathos is Greek for depth, and it has been an indispensable term to critics since Alexander Pope. The word ever since has been used for an unintentional descent in literature when straining to be passionate or elevated. The writer overshoots the mark and drops into the trivial or the ridiculous. Uh, Next is anticlimax. It is sometimes used as an equivalent of bathos, but in a more useful application. It denotes a writer's deliberate drop from the serious and elevated to the trivial and lowly in order to achieve a comic or satiric effect. The next literary term is beat writers. It identifies a loose knit group of poets and novelists writing in the second half of the 1950s and early 1960s who shared a set of social attitude, anti-establishment, anti-political, anti-intellectual, opposed to the pre-self-realization and self-expression. The beat writers often performed in coffee houses and other public places. Beat was used to signify both beaten down and beatific. The group included such diverse figures as the poet Allen Ginsberg, George Corso, and Lawrence, and the novelist William and Jack. Beat achieved in its breathless chanted a celebration of the down and out and the subculture of drug addicted, etc. etc. Many social misfits and compulsive were shown in this. A representative novel of the movement is a Jack Quack on the Road. While the beat movement was short lived, it left its imprint on the subject and forms of many writers of the 1960s and 1970s. The next literary term is biography. Late in the 17th century, John Dryden defined biography neatly as the history of particular man's life. The name now connotes a relatively full account of a particular person's life involving the attempt to set forth character, temperament, as well as the subject activities and experiences. The next literary term is autobiography. It is a biography written by the subject about himself or herself. The next literary term is black art movement. It designates a number of African American writers whose work was shaped by the social and political turbulence of the 1960s, the decade of massive protest against the Vietnam War, militant demands for the right of blacks that led to repeated and sometimes violent confrontations, and the riots and burning in Los Angeles, New York, Newark, and other major cities. The literary movement was associated with the Black Power movement in politics, whose spokesmen, including Stokely and Malcolm X, opposed the proponents of integration and assimilation and instead advocated black separatism, black pride, and black solidarity. Representative of black art put their literary writing at the service of these social and political arms. And the next literary term is the black aesthetic. That was voiced or supported by representative writers in the movement rejected as aspects of domination by white culture, the high art and modernist form advocated by the Ralph Ellison and other African American writers in 1950s. The next literary term is blank verse. It consists of lines of iambic pentameter, 5 stress iambic verse which are unrhymed, hence the term blank. Of all English metrical form, it is a closet to the natural rhythm of English speech and at the same time flexible and adaptive to diverse levels of discourse. As a result, it has been more frequently and variously used than any other type of versification. Soon after blank verse was introduced by the Earl of Surrey in his translation of Book 2 and 4 of Virgil's The Aeneid, it became the standard meter for Elizabethan later poetic drama. a free form of blank verse is still the medium of 20th century. Verse plays as those by Maxwell and Anderson. The next literary term is bombast. It denotes a worldly and inflated diction that it is patiently disproportionate to the matter that it signifies. The high style of even so fine a poet as Christopher Marlowe is at times inappropriate to its sense, as when Faustus declares, "Now by the kingdom of infernal rule, of Styx, Acron, and the fiery lake, of every burning factor, I swear that I do long to see the monuments and situation of bright splendid Rome." The pompous language of the drama is parodied in Henry Fielding's Tom Thumb the Great. The next literary term is Baroque. To delete from an edition of a literary work passages considered by the editor to be indecent or indelicate. Next literary term is Bowdlerize. It has been defined as an incongruous imitation that it imitates the manner or else the subject matter of a serious literary work or a literary genre in verse or in prose, but makes the imitation amusing by a ridiculous disparity between the manner and the matter. The Bowdlerize may be written for the sheer fun of it. Usually, however, it is a form of satire. The butt of the satirical ridicule may be the particular work or the genre that has been imitated, or else the subject matter to which the imitation is incorrectly applied, both of these together. So, thank you so much for listening so carefully.